as of Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for AMAC's May Legends and Leapers program. We are allowing our attendees into the room and will begin the program shortly.
Is there room in the AMAC budget for ergonomic chair to send to me?
Wow, this pregnancy thing is really really getting to you, isn't it?
Am I asking for too much? Look, you gotta milk it while you can.
Yeah, because hey, you're gonna lose your life in a few.
Don't remind me. Don't remind me.
Now, how's it pronounced? Is it pronounced London?
London. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, London's gonna take over.
Oh yeah, she already has, and we still have about 4 more months.
Yeah, we know that she's already taken over. She's already impacting the program. So.
Oh.
Good afternoon, and thank you all once again for joining us for the May AMAC Legends and Leapers. We're going to start our program and turn things over at this point to AMAC COO, Anthony Barnes. Anthony?
Hey everybody, welcome to AMAC's Legends and Leapers program. If this is your first time joining us for our monthly conversation, you are in for a treat. We are excited to hear from our Legend and Leapers speakers today who both believe in and promote the mission and the vision of AMAC. Our organization is fortunate to have industry giants in our membership who continue to pave the way for minorities and women in our industry. And discussions like this are so important as they are meant to enlighten and inspire participants. As a reminder, you can view past discussions in the member portal of our website. And please submit your questions for the panelists in the Q&A throughout the session, and we will get to as many as possible within our time frame. Before I turn the program over to our moderators, I also want to invite and remind everyone that our annual conference is being held next month, June 14th through the 16th. And this is a virtual conference and registration is open. We have some very special membership and registration discounts available for those who are either joining AMAC or renewing their membership. So please visit us on the website to register today. At this time, I would like to turn the program over to our moderators, AMAC Board Chair Ricky Smith and AMAC Emerging Leaders Chair Lauryn Mangum Reed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you for putting in that plug for the AMAC conference. When is it again?
June 14th through the 16th.
Just want to make sure everybody hears that. Please get your registrations in. We're so happy to have you here. You know, this has turned out to be a very popular production for AMAC. Each month we hear more and more of a buzz, and each month we've been successful at bringing to you both a legend and a leaper that brings a level of excitement and perspective and an inspiration that I'm sure all of you look forward to. You know, we take this program very seriously. We do a lot of analytics behind the scene, and I want to thank you all because we noticed that the analytics are telling us that when my face is on the screen, the favorability rates go up, and they've kind of fallen off when Lauryn's face is on the screen. And so we're working with the production schedule to make sure that we mitigate that because we want to have your experience as pleasant as possible. So we're so excited to have Clark Sharpe. There would be no AMAC but for Clark Sharpe. And so he's not just a legend in this program, he's a legend in the industry, and he's certainly a legend in our community. And so we're so excited and honored to have Clark Sharpe join us for this program. I know he's been an inspiration and a mentor to me for many years. And then we have Charlene Reynolds. Charlene. Many of you know Charlene. If you don't, you need to get to know Charlene because she's a rock star in this industry. It's almost kind of odd to call her a leaper, but for the sake of this program and because we really wanted her on, she's a leaper in the context of this program. And so the person who basically took over the program, Lauryn, is going to come up and speak again now. So just give some positivity rates for Lauryn. Come on, Lauryn. Let's give her some positivity. Lauryn, you're up.
So Ricky, I just turned my camera off and I just got word that the analytics, our viewership and ratings just went down. So let me turn my camera back on.
Wow. That's good.
What was that production? Oh, we're good. We're back. We're number one again, Ricky. Don't you worry.
Okay, guys.
I thought you were gonna make a dig and then take my role as introducing our legend and our leaper today too. So
and get fired? No.
These two individuals, they have some lengthy bios, and I know occasionally I read the bios really fast, like a little kid at Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church doing their little script for the first time on the Easter play. So I'm gonna go slow, all right? So you guys can hear everything and every accomplishment that these two individuals have obtained over the past, just over the time that they've been within this industry and just their background. So I'm gonna start with Mr. Clark Sharpe. So founder and owner of Shellis Management Services, Inc., served on the U.S. airports for over 60 years. He's only 62, but since the age of 2, he's been working with airport concessions and with the U.S. Department of Transportation and the FAA's ACDBE program. Currently, Mr. Clark is the president of Shellis Management Services, Inc., with responsibility for business development and operations of airport, retail, and food and beverage concessions at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Responsibilities include contract negotiation, concept selection, store design and build out, management selections, compensation, and corporate policy. As VP of Government Affairs at HMS Host, he was responsible for all aspects of the ACDBE program and contributed to the development and operation of food and beverage concessions and retail stores at airports in the continental US. His duties involved engaging in the selection of joint venture and subtenant participants, corporate policy on tenant engagement, and areas of human resource management. He served in a variety of positions at the FAA for 32 years. The last 17 years were dedicated to the role of National Airport Business Manager, with responsibility for all airport concessions and the inclusion of female and minority participation. While serving in this role, ACDBE concessions grew tremendously in gross annual sales. Duties required the enforcement of proper site selection, reasonable square footage distribution, auditing performance and financial analysis, reasonable sales margins, proper allocation of retail allowance, minimum guarantees, service to common areas, store financing, loans, and upcharges. He also organized and coordinated the first ACDBE conference in 1984, which later became, as we all know and love, the Airport Minority Advisory Council Conference, AMAC, which the conference is when, Ricky?
June 14th through the 16th.
Boom, we'll just do that probably like every 10 minutes, guys. So that is Mr. Clark Sharpe. Now, like Ricky said, this woman is no stranger to the industry. We have her on as a leaper because we're all leapers if we were measuring up to Mr. Sharpe. But Charlene Reynolds, for the past 4 years, has held the position of Assistant Aviation Director, Business Planning for the Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. Charlene has managerial responsibilities for the contract and services, business and properties, fiscal management, and air service development divisions. Ms. Reynolds also led Sky Harbor Airport as the Interim Aviation Services Director from October 2020 through March of 2021. So basically she held it down throughout COVID. Charlene has served the city of Phoenix for close to 20 years in a variety of positions and began her aviation career 5 years ago when she was asked to transfer from her role as Deputy Street Transportation Director to create the Aviation Department First Contract and Services Division. Ms. Reynolds quickly stood up to the program and transformed the food, beverage, and retail solicitation process while creating more opportunities for small businesses. 11 months later, she was promoted to Assistant Aviation Director. Ms. Reynolds proudly leads the 14th largest airport in the nation and the state's largest economic engine. Sky Harbor is an award-winning commercial aviation enterprise, which includes not only airline operations, but terminal concessions, parking management, retail center operations, air cargo, terminal advising, and a real estate portfolio for Sky Harbor International Airport and 2 general aviation airports. Ms. Reynolds currently serves as a board member of the City of Phoenix Employee Retirement Service System and president-elect for the local chapter of the National Forum for Black Public Administrators. Ms. Reynolds holds a Master's of Business Administration degree from Keller Graduate School of Management of DeVry University. Whew. All right.
Wow. Whew. Tired. That's a mouthful. More than a mouthful.
So even though Charlene is newer to the aviation division, she is no stranger to transportation. So let's say that, right? Okay. Now, Ricky, I know we had, and guys, don't mind, Mr. Sharpe, you know, he decided he was going to shoot to the islands really quickly. So he put on a suit and tie just for us, for Legends and Leapers. So we appreciate him taking the opportunity to speak with us while he's on the islands.
I tell you, he must be hot. I expect to see a towel go across your forehead a few times.
All right, thank you.
Yes. So, Lauryn, are we ready for the conversation?
Let's do this. I didn't know if we were going to start off with Mr. Sharpe telling stories about Ricky from diapers to knee-high to a grasshopper, or if we were just going to get right into it.
I think Mr. Sharpe would rather we get right into it.
Okay. All right. We'll save that for the after show.
After show. There you go. So let me try this. Despite your time on the island, Clark, and Charlene, your time in Phoenix, I'm sure, like everyone else, what's been going on in our lives around the unrest around social injustice is no secret, right? It's been front and center. It continues to be front and center. And this is an important time, and it probably should be front and center. Can you talk a little bit about why you think this period of time and the unrest that we're experiencing is so important? And also talk a little bit about why is it, what would be the significance of losing this opportunity to make a true impact on the lives of women and minorities in this country?
I'll give it a try first. I think that one of the things that I greatly appreciate is frequently looking at the contrast over my years in the aviation process. And if I was to describe the period and the activity as I sought my entry into aviation in 1959, I would be describing for you friends, classmates, neighbors who were in the city of Nashville doing sit-ins to be able to have access at the lunch counter in Woolworth. That's the backdrop for me as I went to the airport and pursued entry into the FAA. Coming forward to where we are now, you can draw the contrast that there has been such difficulties and challenges over many, many years. And every time these challenges have been addressed, they have given rise to some measure of improvement, not necessarily all of what we would like. We advanced from no access to the lunch counters in 1959 when I'm coming out of the military in Nashville, Tennessee, to those changes, positive changes that came out of that. There will be positive changes that come out of addressing the issues that we are facing today. Maybe not all of what we would aspire to see, but certainly if you don't take those issues on, you don't get the change. And AMAC, and I would provide for you a contrast between the participation as I was able to see it many years ago and where it is today. That change came about with some agitation and some direct effort on the part of a number of individuals. Some of that journey I would describe for you maybe a little later. But that's how I picture what we are undertaking and working with and observing today in the daily news, and the contrast of what was going on in my life, in my community of Nashville, Tennessee in 1959.
Charlene?
And then to add to that, I think is long past time. I'm originally from Detroit, so I certainly remember the race riot in Detroit. You know, as a kid, one of my first memories during those race riots, you know, police were looking for suspects. They kicked down the door to the house that we lived in looking for a suspect, no search warrant. Put my mom and dad against the wall with guns drawn. You know, at that point in time, you know, as a kid to see something like that and experience it, you know, that was the norm. It was allowed. We didn't have a voice. We didn't have a seat at the table. So I think as I watch what has happened throughout my lifetime, I think that what we have endured and what we have tried to address through numerous means has really kind of come to the forefront. Not only is it people of color asking for equality and justice that we well deserve, we have others at the table with us. We also have the media. So some of those things that happen in the dark has now been brought to the light. And so not only are folks seeing it across the United States, they're seeing it across the world. And so it's a conversation that has to be had. And I am so thankful for folks who are leading the charge, who are walking the streets, who are advocating, because it is something that we have to continuously address, move forward, and then to acknowledge that we have not resolved the issues of the past, that they have been long-standing, just in so many different areas: race, equality, workplace, economics, and we have to continue on until, you know, justice and equality, you know, is for all and is blind, because we still haven't gotten there. We're making more progressive steps, and there's more that needs to be done.
So, so both of you seem to have, and thank you for both of those comments. So both of you seem to have both an understanding and an appreciation for the role of like-minded organizations in these kinds of movements. Clark, I mean, as one of the catalysts, one of the founders, one of the inspirers of AMAC and all that AMAC continues to do, and Charlene, your role with NFBPA today, both signal that you have an understanding of the role of organizations. Why is it so important that organizations like AMAC and NFPBA, for example, stand up and play a leadership role during this time?
I think because we have a voice and we have a platform. If you have a voice and a platform and you don't utilize it, then that's a problem. And so through NFBPA, this was a discussion that we had amongst our membership. Also, some of our membership went directly to our city manager and said, hey, this is a problem, this is an issue, we want to have it discussed, we want a platform. And there was an equity series that was created for all city employees. We were also invited, myself included, to have a discussion, a very, very candid conversation with the city manager about race and equity in the workplace for people of color. And so you have to utilize your platform for change. And so I am certainly thankful for being or having the opportunity to share my story and my experiences with the city manager to affect change. And I think all organizations need to not shy away from those issues that are divisive. The only way that we get to understanding is that we bring issues to the forefront and we have a dialogue about it, because that's where it ultimately starts, conversation and understanding.
You're on mute, Clark. You're on mute. There you go.
Excuse me. I will add something, because I think that I would ask the audience and everybody to recognize AMAC has been part of a tremendous journey. I'll look at public airports in these United States in 1978. It was 5 of us. We did a study. It basically confirmed that female participation, minority participation on public airports basically did not exist. That's a fact that was put in a report, and it became the basis for the ACDBE regulation that was issued in 1980. If I come forward to the last reporting year by the FAA, maybe 2019, females and minorities were enjoying over $3 billion worth of economic participation on public airports. And I will go back where we began, with a small meeting and some good thinking minds in 1983 that said, how can we change public airports? It was 9 of us in that meeting. One became an airport director, Bill Jennings. The most significant thing was we saw a vehicle that we could use to change airports. And that meeting was to use the tool of a conference. We would rapidly disseminate the requirements that airports had to change. That took place in 1984, and it has never stopped. It was 1 year we didn't get to go because of budget constraints at the congressional level. But every year since then, the conference and AMAC has been the major tool that has changed from 0 participation to $3 billion worth of participation. And that's a tremendous economic change. And it's tremendous credit to all those who have continued to engage for the change. And Ricky, I'll look at you as an illustration of that change. When you first came and connected with us and the conference, a nominal staff person at BWI, and your professional journey is a tremendous testament to the change that this whole process has created. Bill Jennings at Orlando, a similar. I go back to the day when James Rogers at Little Rock, Arkansas was one of the few minority participants at the executive level across airports. And we can migrate forward all the way to Angela here in Atlanta, and Ben DeCosta and other names around the country. The most significant thing is we know the day when it didn't exist. We know the tool and the work effort that helped bring it forward. And there are a few people around today who was there at the AMAC journey began in 1988. Bob Cruz, one of the founders at that point, is still, and his system of participation with his family is still there. So a lot of changes have occurred, all in a very positive way, without a lot of confrontation. I mean, significant confrontation that changed the legislation, but changed the airport. Just an enormous change. Thank you.
So before Lauryn jumps in, I'm gonna kind of shift a little bit. So airports are beginning to recover. Airports are moving swiftly down this road of recovery. And one of the challenges, if you talk to almost any airport in the country or the partners at airports, one of the major challenges that airports are experiencing is getting people to come back to work, right? And knowing how hard you, Mr. Sharpe, and you're currently doing, Ms. Reynolds, to create opportunities for women and minorities to take advantage of professional and employment opportunities in this industry, not just at airports, but with all the service providers at airports. I would like to just hear your thoughts on that dynamic.
Charlene, feel free, but I just have so much that I'd like to share because I understand the contrast, and I know when females and minorities didn't participate on airport. I was there, I saw it. I was in the state of Kentucky for 3 years as the only one in FAA, only minority in FAA, and Helen Mapes was the only female in FAA. And we therefore were the only female and minority on airports other than the sky caps or some other custodial service. But the point I want to make is FAA is an illustration of where this industry has to go. When I came into FAA, there was almost zero female minority participation. They used the tool of work study programs, cooperative education. Those tools made a tremendous difference. Today, industry are using those same tools as they recognize the absence of inclusion. I'm just excited when I look up and I see the Charlenes of the industry and the Daryl Bentons of the industry, the Courtney Thorntons of the industry. The changes that have occurred are enormous. I call them enormous because I know when it was zero, okay? So the tools that changed FAA are the same tools that work today with students, college-age individuals engaged in undergraduate or graduate work are involved in cooperative education or work study programs and use that as their launching pad right into the industry. So Charlene is closer and seeing it every day now, but the changes have occurred and will continue to occur. We'll never go back.
So to that, Ricky, I'll talk a little bit about the employment growth. Here at Sky Harbor, we're at 80% of 2019. And so we have had major challenges in serving our customers. You know, as you know, the industry was decimated by the pandemic, and then the relief packages have been, you know, a double-edged sword. And so what I'm hearing from our ACDBE partners are that they're struggling to get their workers to come back. At the same time, the airport has an expectation that we have businesses open to serve our customers. So how do we close that divide? And so trying to be good partners with our ACDBEs, trying to understand what their struggles are relative to how many employees they can get back to work. I'm working with my team personally. What can we do from a badging perspective? If it takes 10 days to reactivate someone's badge, that's a problem because in those 10 days that employee can decide, oh, well, that's not really the opportunity that I want. I want to go and pursue something else, you know, and especially from a workplace perspective, you can interview 100 employees and maybe only get 2. So how do we serve our customers, but we have to continue to work with our partners. Then 2, we have to look to innovate. I think what we have to do is kind of mine those non-traditional sources of employment, whether or not it's connecting with colleges, nonprofit organizations, and or others. From the airport perspective, we are getting ready to embark on phase 2 of our return to work policy. And we're having struggles and challenges and pushback from some of our employees who don't want to come back into the airport. And so it is a situation that we're going to have to give a lot of thought to, innovation, because we collectively all have the same problem to solve. How do we want to get back to 2019, but there are some things that won't return as fast as we would like them to. And that's the employee base. And what do we do in the interim? And how do we support our partners as they struggle to get their workforce back engaged?
Okay. Thank you.
So my question, I can't ask it now because we're in a whole different section, thanks to Ricky. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit, but I'm gonna come back and ask my question because I really want to know. But you guys talk, this is last year, everything was COVID. How are we going to survive this? And Mr. Sharpe has an amazing paradigm on this because from his standpoint, we're never going to go as far back as we were, as far as women-owned businesses, minorities, the ACDBE program, where our growth is upward trajectory regardless. Now, we've been putting such a strong emphasis on innovation lately, whether it's our industry or just our country as a whole, because of the lack of employees trying to get staffing. But what are some ways that you guys feel as though we can engage leapers, we can engage young professionals, we can engage emerging leaders, college students, et cetera, that maybe weren't thinking about the aviation industry, to expose them and potentially make that pivot? And I kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on ways that we can do that.
So for me, I think, again, it's a conversation. And so what I personally do is reach out to organizations, going out to some of the community colleges. One, you have to show students they're people who look like them, who are actually at the executive level. You have to educate them about the opportunities in aviation because it is vast. I also share information because, young folks really want to know, well, how much money can I make? And so I talk to them not only about the compensation, but then too, it's connecting them to resources. When I started college, I had to pay for it myself. And so not everybody, has a scholarship or has parents that can pay for college, but how do you connect them? So I spend time mentoring a lot of young individuals. And here at the City of Phoenix, we have something called College Depot. And I have driven many students down to College Depot, walking them through the scholarship opportunity and how to apply. So really engaging folks at the high school level. If you can get them in middle school, you have to start with them early. And just teaching them about the vast opportunities in aviation, because I could tell you the students that I talked to never really thought about aviation as a career, and then just kind of working with them and passing the baton over to the next generation.
And what Charlene has mentioned has just been a tremendous tool for us as well, and a tool that we advocate. If you want to reach a population, you go to them. You take all of the information that might incentivize them, open avenues that they never thought of as possibilities. You have to go that rate. I mentioned earlier, cooperative education. Any way you can get the student to touch, to feel, to appreciate, and then be inspired by that occupational area is tremendous. So if you don't go to them, sometimes you may discount the student programs that you have a middle school or junior or an elementary school. Just come and visit, and you're giving out that. Those introductions are lasting. I can remember, and excuse me for using an illustration, in my segregated community of Nashville, Tennessee, in the 50s, you didn't even know where the airport was unless it was a little dirt airport that Rip had a Piper Cub, and that was our introduction to aviation. And from that, a lot of students were inspired, as I have classmates that went on and became pilots with American, with United. But those little nuggets of inspiration, don't discount how valuable they are. And Charlene was touching them, and they work for us as well.
Lauryn?
I didn't know if you were going to cut me off again, so I was just waiting to see if you were going to speak, Ricky, because you know.
Sorry, I was looking at the analytics graph right here.
You notice that when I talk, it goes up, and then okay, I understand, I get it now. So, Mr. Sharpe, you are, you know, if we could have the Mount Rushmore of the aviation industry and AMAC, obviously your face would be on there, right? Mm-hmm. And we always talk about mentors. We always talk about those individuals that helped you to get to where you are. And you, sir, happen to be a lot of people's mentors, happen to be a lot of people's, their reason as to why, right? That have helped them along the way. You being one of the founding fathers, who helped you? Who pushed you to keep going through everything that you've seen and to create such an amazing organization and amazing opportunities for all of us that are on this call right now?
Let me share with you an individual that I consider to be a mentor. You know, I use the reference just to have someone maybe appreciate, having grown up in a segregated community in the 50s when, you know, it was legal in my city. I appreciate those who are outside of the norm. When I came into FAA, I applied during my third or fourth year for a position in the state of Kentucky that was unheard of for a minority. But the gentleman who was the selecting official called me, and he said, if I select you, will I have a situation that I can't send you to some of these locations because I know that segregation still exists. And I assured him that I could navigate the challenges that may come my way. He could have easily just wrote me off, even though I was the most qualified candidate for the position. He could have written it off, because he later told me in his Chicago office of the FAA, they had a tradition. Anytime they interviewed a minority, they would score the application in such a way it would never go anywhere. Now, this is his admission to me, but this is my mentor, because he called and asked me about taking the challenges of the position. Subsequently, he promoted me 3 times, became my flight instructor, and we were friends right through the point of his passing. But he could have just stopped everything in my life because he was going to yield to the conditions of bias. That person made all the difference in my life as I later became one of the staff officers in our regional office in Cleveland. I would mention one other one. Today, AMAC wouldn't exist but for Leon Watkins permitting us to use his authority as an official in FAA. He wasn't a technician. He didn't know the rules top to bottom, but he knew and had had enough experience with segregation coming out of Dansville, Virginia in the 50s, that he wanted the same change that everyone else did. He permitted us without question to do the things we did when we even brought AMAC and the first chair of AMAC, John Greer out of Nashville, into the program as the co-host as we went into Dallas for the conference. So I used Leon Watkins, who was unafraid for his federal career, to permit us to use his authority to make tremendous change. And I used the person of John Hanlon, who acknowledged his period of functioning in an FAA office in a biased, discriminatory way. He became my mentor and my flight instructor.
Wow.
Wow.
Powerful.
So Charlene, and I have a question for you specifically. Being a woman of color, being a young girl who grew up in the Detroit race riots, and now, you know, being in Phoenix, who this is a state, or Arizona is a state that didn't even recognize MLK Day up until the late 90s, early 2000s almost. What challenges did you face in your journey to where you are now?
Yeah, and so it was a journey, and it was culture shock. So coming from Detroit to Phoenix in 1985, I remember my husband taking me downtown, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, where are all the people who look like me? And so when I first got here, I temped at several entities. And so the first question I would always get is, well, where do you live? Do you live on the South Side? I could never understand that. And so my husband, who was here 6 months prior, and I said, babe, why is everybody asking me if I live on the South Side? He was like, well, that's because that's where all the Black folks live. And so it was kind of interesting coming from a very diverse community to Phoenix, and then being the only person of color in some of the first jobs that I held. But what I understood early on is that I was setting the standard for everybody else who came behind me. And so what that meant to me, work twice as hard as anybody else, show up on time, right? And do my job with excellence, because at that time, and there still are stereotypes. And so I wanted to break those stereotypes. So when people said, oh, well, we can't find people like you, you have an excellent example of what a woman of color can do in the workplace. So therefore, you shouldn't have a problem the next time someone is interviewing across the table who looks like me. So I think that was very important. Have I had challenges? Have I gone through processes at times and know that I was the best and brightest at the table, but only to be told it's not your time, you were the best candidate, you know? So I have experienced some of those things, but even at those moments, what you do, you know, you take a moment to have your own personal pity party, but you move on. You never take yourself out of the game, and you keep pushing on. As a candidate, you keep pushing on, applying for things because you know that what your capability is. And because someone tells you no on this opportunity, notice too that people are watching how you respond when you don't get something that you apply for. So what you do is you basically show them, okay, I'm waiting on the next opportunity, but this is what you missed out on, because I'm going to work even harder and show you that you missed an opportunity. And so I think it's how you handle yourself and setting the example for everyone else that comes behind you is one thing that I always tried to do when I came to aviation and stood up the contracts and services division. I was the only person of color at the middle manager level, in which you hear, we can't find people who look like you. You know, we can't find a diverse pool. Well, having the opportunity to start a brand new division, when I started it, it was 60% diverse. So I showed them that it can be done. So you always set the example and you set the standard and you show people, yes, it can be done. We have talented people and you just need to look for them, because we are here, we're capable, we're ready, and we excel at what we do.
So I'm getting a little frustrated because as I look at the analytics, the numbers keep going up when Lauryn's on the screen, and I don't understand why mine aren't going up. And so if I appear to be in my feelings, that's kind of what I'm going through. So my next question is, I'm going to try to imagine I have some authority that I don't have to give you some power that you don't have. And so, you know, as we constantly fight to liberate ourselves, I want you to imagine you have the power for 1 year to remove a barrier. It could be real or perceived imaginary, it could be financial, it could be cultural, it could be social, economic, whatever that barrier is. But you can remove one barrier that will liberate our people, and you have 1 year to do it, and you have the absolute authority to do it. What would that barrier be and why?
I would say access to education, because that's where it actually starts. When I was in middle school, I had an opportunity. I had a great mentor. My first mentor, his name was Dr. Harvey, and he had a program, and it was called Who Said I Can't? And it set the foundation for everything that I did, and it built my confidence. And so in that program, he had two sets of students, those who needed to be tutored, and then the straight A students, which I was one of, and he utilized us as the mentors and the tutors. And so one, it taught me how to give back. It taught me confidence. And then he really, really cared about education and opportunities and ingraining in all of us how far education can take you. And so I think when we have access to education, that everybody has the necessary tools, computers, quality of teachers, I think that is the equalizer. And when you have a great education system and you have great teachers in the education system who build hope and not hopelessness in their students and encourage them to go on and conquer the world, I think that's where it starts. So if I had an opportunity to knock down any barrier, it would be true equalization within the educational society for all people, and especially people of color, because we are still not there. And I think that's where some of the inequity begins, is within our education system.
All right.
And I would take an approach that would be inclusive of what Charlene has said, but from a different direction. And that is to convince individuals that all they do will make a difference, whether it's education, whether it is just working hard in whatever role they currently have, but eliminate the perception that you can't make a difference. It doesn't matter. So often you will have individuals who may be inhibited just because they are carrying the baggage that, well, it's not going to make a difference. Yes, the education will make a difference. Yes, the hard work will make a difference. And I'm oftentimes reminded, and I tip my hat with gratitude to look at immigrants who came to this country with a bag, and they just worked. And they truly did not have many of the barriers that people have to work through out of an ethnic community. But it's an illustration that that hard work and that attitude can make all the difference in the world, the perception that I can succeed. I remember talking with an associate in my store, and she was already convinced that she could do anything she wanted to in her life achievements. And that attitude will take care of so much that inhibits individuals today.
All right.
And you too, and I will say this, I know I was a little quiet in the beginning for two reasons. One, I wanted Ricky to see that when I don't speak, the ratings do go down. But also just the two of you exude and just are the epitome of be the change that you want to see. So for a moment, I was, what did they say? I was fangirling, because to be on and to be moderating a discussion with both you, Charlene, and also you, Mr. Clark, is just, for me, like Charlene said, the little Black girl from Detroit, this is a really big deal. So I definitely appreciate you both being the change that you wanted to see, and knowing that whatever stride I make and whatever steps I take are going to be for the betterment, if not just myself, but for someone else. And I know for a fact that we can all definitely applaud you both and truly appreciate it. My question, I want to kind of jump over to the ACDBE program, because both of you in your own right have had a hand in that. And, Mr. Sharpe just talked about, we can never go back. We've made complete leaps and bounds. But what obstacles are you guys seeing right now, 30 years later within the ACDBE program? And where do you want to see this ACDBE program in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I just have the perspective that there's a tremendous skill set in terms of management and the capacity to own. I think it's undenied. What is the barrier is access to capital. I think airports, and this is my FAA platform, I think airports can do a tremendous good in leveraging financial institutions to make capital available. I applaud some airports who have taken that initiative. I remember Orlando back in the days when Darrell Benton and Bill Jennings were there, took some initiatives that parallel that. But capital is the barrier. Those who can make and have the biggest impact is the airport owners, and let them step forward to facilitate that, because the skill set is there, the aspiration to be the owner and engage as an ACDB is there at a high quality level. They just need better access to capital.
And so I totally agree with Mr. Sharpe as he said the words access to capital. I said, okay, he stole my response. But, as we know, historically, there have always been those inhibitors when it comes to minority-owned businesses and or financing, whether or not it's redlining and or other tools. And we know when those barriers were taken away, then we excelled. And so access to capital would be so beneficial to those wanting currently in the ACDBE space and/or those wanting to enter into the ACDBE space. It is a quiet secret as I go out and I talk to small business owners, what exactly is ACDBE? How do I gain entry? And their primary challenge is access to capital. So if we can solve that problem, I would, I think we would see much greater entry by women and minorities in the airport space.
So unless Lauren's going to try to sneak another question in, Anthony Barnes is back and he probably has some questions from the audience.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, Lauryn, for taking us through this conversation. Very enlightening and inspiring. We do have a question that has come in. The question reads, thank you for sharing your experiences. You both are so inspiring. What is your best advice for someone looking to break into the industry?
I assume that the question about breaking in is in the capacity of a concessionaire and not necessarily in the professional management role. I love to recognize when somebody has stepped up, they've run somebody else's business for 5 years, they know the ins and outs, the management component is no question. And the only issue is the capital and the opportunity to compete. Oftentimes, you may have not a set aside, but a small business opportunity. And they are inhibited not because they can't do the job well, they don't have the money, but the capital, the bonding, the capital, those things. So if somebody wants to get in to the airport concession business, solidify your means for capital and bonding. Your management skill, you can buy it if you need to. You can buy management into your team, but you must have access to your capital and your bonding to be successful. The airports, last time I checked, hadn't decided they are going to do away with the MAG. That's still there. I hope they change it, but the capital and the bonding, get access to it. You can do a lot more about getting into the business.
And Charlene, if you want to come from a standpoint of airport management and that side, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Lauryn. And so what I would say is when you want to move up, I think you need to focus on what I always say, transferable skills. So when I came into the airport to start the contracts and services division, the opportunity came for the assistant aviation director. And so it required 7 years of experience in aviation. And so how I framed my resume is that I had 15 years in the movement of people, because I had spent time in street transportation with an engineering firm and also with public transit. So I spoke to my experience moving people, also federal regulations, because I had dealt with not only to that point in time FAA, but also the transit FTA and FHWA. And so I expanded that information on my resume and was able to go through the first step. And so I think what sometimes people do is you have to look at all your skills that you have gained over your career, and you have to highlight those. So just don't get stuck on the words within the job description and get discouraged by some of those requirements. Don't take yourself out of the game. Let them say, no to you. But the first step is to focus on those transferable skills. And if you meet those, then go ahead and apply. And then I say you always, once you get there, you have to continuously up your game. and add to your skill set and your toolbox. So take those opportunities for growth, whether or not it's webinars, training, conferences, or whatever, because you can't be successful in your job unless you understand what's happening in the industry. And at this level, you have to do some forecasting of what it looks like 5 years from now. So thank you for that.
Thank you for those responses. Thank you for that insight. And just want to thank everyone for joining us today. We're actually at the top of the hour. What we normally do after these sessions, and excuse the jets flying over, but what we normally do after these sessions is allow our guests to stay on for a little bit and take a few more questions and answers. So we encourage you, if you did not get a chance to ask your question, stick around for a couple of minutes after this, and we'll be, we want to have a little bit more conversation. We call it the after show. But also before you leave, we also want to remind you registration for the annual conference is open. We have some very good specials for new and returning members. So please be sure to visit us on the website and register today. You don't want to wait too late to register. Again, thank you for joining us. As a reminder, we're not going to meet next month. Instead, we're going to meet at the annual conference. So there won't be a Legends and Leapers program at the end of the month. We're just going to meet at the annual conference. Again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony. And shout out to Chelsea. This is Chelsea's, she is new to AMAC. This is her first AMAC event that she is attending. And she jumped right in there feet first, asked a phenomenal question. So welcome to the industry. We hope that you will be attending the conference, which is what dates, Ricky?
June 14th through the 16th. And I tell you what, I applaud Chelsea as well. Chelsea, I'm surprised you could get a point in because Charles Hall dominated the chat room. It seems like every 5 minutes we got a comment from Charles. Thank you, Charles.
I appreciated Charles' engagement as well. I'm looking, I'm like, ooh, that was a good point too. Charles, I agree. So even though the conference is going to be virtual, we're super excited. We're going to be using a phenomenal platform. If you weren't able to attend the pre-conference event that we had last Friday, to just kind of get involved and understand, hop in, and kind of a little preview into what the conference is going to look like, we're doing another one on June 4th, I believe. So make sure you get registered for that so that you can get a little bit more excitement for the conference. And Ricky, Charles Wall said that he's going to reach out to you.
I see it. I'm looking forward to Charles. I know Charles.
So Clark, now that we have the opportunity, and Mr. Benton, and I always appreciate Mr. Benton, Daryl Benton. We all know him. I call him Bishop. Any opportunity that this man gets to speak, excuse me, on any platform, he always makes sure that he pays homage to Mr. Jennings, Mr. Leon Watkins, yes. You, Mr. Sharpe, he always does, and just his appreciation for everything that they have done, just as legends, and getting us to where we are today. You know, just to be able to hear you, Mr. Sharpe, talking about the food counter that we weren't even as minorities, we weren't even allowed in, you know. And to see you today, to see and hear how far we've come, because a lot of times I just see how far we've come in the past, 5 years, 7 years, but to see how far in the leaps and bounds that we've taken over the past 3-4 decades, it truly is amazing to be able to hear those stories. And I hope to be able to have the opportunity to hear even more. And with that, we've come so far, but what steps do you guys think that we need to take to keep pushing for change for women and minority businesses within our industry and just in general?
One of the things that I would mention, I recall the day when there was a minority rent-a-car, a minority parking lot operator, and he was the vendor at Washington National Airport. And another airport had such a restrictive bid condition, he couldn't even bid. Now, how can you operate the parking at Metropolitan Washington Airport, but you can't do it at an airport that is somewhat equivalent? It wasn't even an airport with a greater enplanement. But those restrictions should not distinguish between where you can participate and where you cannot. The barriers to participation. The good thing that worked for me, whenever I became aware of one as an FAA compliance individual, we took exception to it. And AMAC can at least acknowledge what is best practice if they can't do as we did, take exception. So as we look at that process today, all across this country, sometimes someone may raise with me the issue of what happens when there's no regulation. And the thing that I'm so impressed with is giants have occurred in location after location. You name it, I can give you some names. They don't need a regulation in Detroit. They don't need a regulation to survive. It makes it better, you know. So when I go to New Orleans, the footprint left by Dutch Morel and Justice Ortiq, it will constrain what happens in that arena. And every urban community across this country is going to be subject to a similar constituent engagement. So I just wanted to mention that piece. Thank you, Charlene.
So I remember as a young professional, my first AMAC conference. Clark, you may remember Mike Skinner, the late Mike Skinner, who was the head of the Minority Business Development Program here at BWI. And he would keep it a secret, but he took me under his wing and he introduced me to AMAC, and I went to my first conference. And I remember walking the halls of the convention center and the hotel and looking at the CEO forum. And they were just icons, guys like Clark Sharpe and Bill Jennings and Johnny Cochran and Herman J. Russell. And these guys were icons. And for me as a kid who grew up studying Black Enterprise magazine, I always studied these icons in the top 100, right? And so when I went to the AMAC conference, you know, they became kind of like real life. You know, when you can see a Herman J. Russell or a Johnny Cochran or those guys, Dave Bing, when you see those guys at a conference, and it was just so inspiring. And those guys never placed a word directly on me. They didn't have to. I just witnessed them, right? And so, I've said this before, Mr. Sharpe. You deserve, and you're extremely humble guy. You don't waste humility, but you deserve all the credit in the world for those people that you've inspired, whether you know them or not, because the success that we have in this industry is minorities, women and minorities. And this is not just with the concessions program. I know, the original effort was focused to a large degree around concessions, but that created a mindset for minorities in other aspects of airports, in professional services, and other opportunities in airports, and on the employment side. So when you look at someone like Lauryn, who looks at this industry now, and Anthony, you just cannot imagine. When I stepped into BWI, there were only two other minorities in the organization: Mike Skinner and the late Colonel Solomon Hart. And the organization probably had 300 people at that time. Right. So to go to an AMAC conference and to see people that look like you, who have it going on, for me was a game changer. And Mr. Sharpe, you had everything to do with that. You really did.
Well, I want to repeat that as a Southern region official who became responsible for business across the country in airports, nothing we did could have occurred without Leon Watkins' support. Mm-hmm. The authority of his office in Washington was our permission to do what we did. And he stayed with it. He acknowledged and permitted. I asked Leon, I said, when we were going to the Dallas conference, I said, can the chair of AMAC, John Greer, get equal billing and come onto the platform with you? I said, sure. That started AMAC down the road. Had he not consented, I did all of the conference and AMAC work from my home and from my FAA office. In today's political environment, I would be mud, okay, for doing that work enough. But that was the risk that we collectively were willing to take because we were just unafraid, and Leon led the pack at being unafraid and permitted us to do those things that we were able to achieve.
And what can't get lost in this conversation, as we have two ladies on the call, is you had a solid partner, Mr. Sharpe, who was there with you every step of the way, including with AMAC.
Yes, and she's sitting here looking at me right now.
So they knocked me off.
Well, just like when Charlene said her husband took her downtown and she was looking around. Well, I did a lot of AMAC stuff, material and administrative things here. She permitted me to buy an IBM XT computer so I could keep all of the AMAC records here at home. And we went to the local post office and got a post office box so AMAC would have an official mailing address. So it was a lot of things. But the most important thing is I am indebted to see you, Ricky, and all of the other board members and Anthony and all of what has happened over these years continue the process because it's so deserving of that $3 billion in 2019 for females and minority is huge, okay? It is huge. And I just applaud all of your work for the continuation of what I see taking place.
I know, and I keep picking on Lauryn because I love her to death, but Lauryn's population, her generation, and the generation younger than her, as much as that $3 billion excites us, their mindset is, well, gosh, if we made $3 billion, can you imagine how much money they make? And that's what we should be going after. And that's why I'm so impressed with, and so optimistic about the future because their imagination is just so much broader. Each generation, the imagination opens up more and more and more. What I refer to as sometimes the artificial barriers, because sometimes we restrict ourselves psychologically. Sometimes they don't have those barriers and they're able to accomplish much more than our generations are able to accomplish.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I have this image of a collection of people across this country who are my urban giants. From Maynard Jackson, who appointed the first minority director here in Atlanta of Calvin Carter, and Harold Washington in Chicago, who appointed Earl Hoard, the first minority at Chicago Airport, and Tom Bradley, who locked up with Johnny Cochran to influence the LA airport, and even where you were in Cleveland, Carl Stokes and Michael White, and the lady who preceded you, Cindy Rich, in the director job. All of these are individuals who embrace what you do today and made it occur a lot easier in those communities. So I'm just grateful as I kind of try to go on an extended fishing trip in that ocean, but in my picture, I'm just grateful that you're there manning the store.
Well, thank you. Thank you for everything. And Charlene?
And one thing I like to add, Ricky, I know I touched upon mentorship, but I like to talk about mentorship versus sponsorship because I think that that is important. So I've mentored many and sponsored just as many. And so sponsorship is, you know, it's one step above mentorship. Yes, it's actually absolutely picking up the phone, calling someone, advocating for someone to create an opportunity for them. So whether or not it is a job and or it is a business opportunity, you know, I think what we have to do in passing the baton, not only first being good role models, being a mentor, and then being a sponsor. So I think there's multiple steps to absolutely that in creating opportunities for women and minorities within this space.
Absolutely. All right. When Anthony disappears from the screen, we know that means it's time to call it a wrap. Lauryn?
I usually thought it was when he jumps back on. That's him saying like, okay, this is the countdown. You guys see my face. It's about that time. But we still had quite a few people rocking with us. So I definitely, I mean, I can't say it enough. I just appreciate the opportunity to be on this platform with you guys. I mean, even with Ricky, yeah.
Notice, so, you guys notice she said even with Ricky?
Well, I was going to talk about you earlier when Mr. Sharpe said you had a nominal role with BWI, and I was like, so the same position he has now?
Wow, that's... and that's progress.
So he hasn't done much over these past couple of decades, Mr. Sharpe? Is that what you're trying to say? But no, I truly do appreciate it, and just this platform as a whole to be able to bring just industry legends and industry leapers together. And I think the biggest thing is we always talk about different generations and how different, the different generations are, but to be on a platform like this and see all the similarities and still, challenges and obstacles that we all have to overcome and hurdles that we have to jump through, but just to see how much growth we've seen in over time, and just having Mr. Sharpe on the call today, really seeing how far we've come to put it in perspective. So I'm excited. And somebody said they're excited for 2022 conference. I'm gonna throw it out here now, Ricky. I think we should have an in-person Legends and Leapers for the 2022 conference.
In Chicago, absolutely.
Let's do it. But super excited to see everyone virtually. There will still be opportunities to network. People talked about getting Mr. Sharpe and Ms. Reynolds information. You guys will be able to network with them during the conference through the platform that we'll be utilizing. So again, the conference is June 14th through the 16th. Don't worry, you can have business on top and whatever you want on bottom. Nobody will know. So it's not too many conferences that you can get away with that, but we're super excited to see everyone as Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport hosts this year's virtual conference. Did I do good, Anthony?
Amazing, thank you.
All right.
Okay, keep that in my contract for next year, thank you.
All right, well, thank you all so much. We'll give you back some time. I imagine once Clark goes off screen, he just rips the suit off and he's in it.
And jumps in?
The swim shorts, right?
I was waiting for the giant coconut.
All right, well, thank you again. Thank you so much for making yourselves available. I'm sure we've gotten a lot of feedback already. People are very happy with the wisdom, the inspiration that you've provided them. And, again, we can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you all June 14th through the 16th for the annual conference, virtually.
And Lauryn, you scare me when I see you working out.
So,
you do.
Why? Because you don't work out, Ricky?
No. See, I was saying something sweet because you're carrying a child. And when I see you working out, I get nervous. So just be safe.
So this is the thing is what people don't realize is it's actually recommended. So I am doing my best to make sure that I stay healthy and do everything in my power to have as many, have as few complications later down the line. Right. They also say whatever state you go into labor in is usually the state that your child comes out. So when my daughter comes out with muscles and all that jazz, ready to beat Uncle Ricky up, I just want you to be ready.
Well, I'm going to treat London too nicely for her to beat me up. But it's not like you are an unhealthy person or a person who's not already physically fit and you're now trying to turn it on.
Correct. It's all about maintenance and keeping it going. Just because you get pregnant doesn't mean you're supposed to stop your life. So although I can't have a drink during Emerging Leaders Cocktails and Conversations, I'll have my water and I might, put some lemon or some fruit into it. But other than that,
no alcoholic beverages.
Non-alcoholic beverages, which they have now. So if you want to send me some non-alcoholic rosé, I definitely appreciate it.
All right. You got it.
All right.
Always good seeing you.
Always. Thank you. See you guys soon. Bye.